Hi, I'm Ken, and I'm going to show you an interesting old thing. This is a Fotron. Now, these were made by the Traid Corporation of Glendale, California, from about 1962 to about 1971. Now, this was intended to be a camera that's easy to use and was marketed towards people who wanted to take pictures but didn't necessarily want to learn to be a photographer. It was intended to simplify casual photography. And at the time, the marketing was aimed primarily at women. Accordingly, it has a lot of features that in 1962 were extremely innovative, like automatic film advance, cartridge film loading, and a built in electronic flash. But the whole thing is implemented in a mind bogglingly clunky way, and there were aspects to the way it was marketed and sold that were dodgy, to say the least, and in fact led to at least one class action lawsuit against Traid Corporation. But we'll get into that later. The first thing I want to do is demonstrate the camera itself and show you a few of its features. Now, I think the best way to do that is to maybe take you through the manual of arms for the Fotron and show you how it was operated, and hopefully that will illustrate some of its features. The first thing you did was to plug the camera into the wall for 18 hours to recharge its internal battery. That powered the internal flash and the automatic film advance. Now, here is the charge port. I don't have the proper cable for it, but it looks like it was something comparable to what you'd find on a kitchen mixer. This here is a little neon bulb that would illuminate to indicate that the camera was charging. Once the camera was fully charged, you were ready to insert a film cartridge. Now, Traid Corporation came out with their own proprietary film format for this. Interestingly, beating the very comparable Eastman Kodak 126 format to the market by about a year. Rather than coming up with their own film, though, they simply repackaged standard 8x8 roll film inside this plastic cartridge. You see here this little advance gear that mates with a matching gear inside the camera to advance the film. And this little plunger, I believe this closes a switch that indicates to the internal electronics in the camera that a cartridge is loaded. You see here on the cartridge it says insert right side first. I think they were trying to guarantee that the advance gears were in mesh before this plunger got depressed. So the way you loaded the film, you'd stick the camera in here, lock it into the right side, and then push it home. And immediately, the camera would advance the film to the first frame automatically. Now, when you were ready to take pictures, if you were outdoors, you'd push this button, the on button. That would turn the camera on and set the focus and exposure controls to outdoors. See these focus indicators? If your subject was far away, from 8 feet to infinity, you'd push the far button, and that would fire the camera and advance the film and fire the flash. Or on the other hand, if your subject was close, from 4 to 8 feet, you'd push the close button. Conversely, if your subject was indoors, you'd push the indoors button. You see, these focus indicators just changed. If your subject was from 8 to 12 feet away, you'd push the far button. Or if the subject were from 4 to 8 feet away, you'd push the close button. And in either case, it would automatically fire the shutter, fire the flash, and advance the film to the next frame. Now, when you'd used up all of your pictures, get to 10 exposures, the film would automatically advance to the end, and it was time to remove and replace the film magazine. To conserve battery power, you could push the off button, and that would turn the camera off. So these are some fairly advanced features for 1962. You got automatic film advance, electronic flash, and a simplified push-button exposure and focus system. Cameras that had those features weren't going to become mainstream for decades. But the whole thing is just, it is so clunky and massive. I mean, it doesn't come across in the video just how huge and heavy this thing is. I mean, you could grab this thing by the handle and swing it around and use it as a melee weapon against a horde of orcs. I mean, all right. Here is a Keystone Ever Flash. This was a camera, this is from about 1971, and it uses the comparable Kodak 126 format. And here's the Fotron. I mean, look at the size comparison. And here, let's put them on the scale. The Fotron comes in at 1.2 kilograms. whereas the Keystone with its batteries weighs about a third that. I mean, come on. It just... I mentioned the marketing of the Fotron at the beginning of the video. Now, these were not sold at camera stores, and you couldn't walk up to the camera counter at Kmart and buy one. These were sold door to door, just like encyclopedias and brushes and vacuum sweepers used to be. A guy would come up and knock on your door and try and sell you a camera. They had some kind of cringeworthy marketing materials for the Fotron as well. Love pictures but hate photography? It's ideal for the 99 out of 100 wives who refuse to fuss with their husband's cameras. Yeah. Not only was the camera immense, so was its price. In 1967, these things sold for $491.60. In 2020 dollars, that's the equivalent of $3,900. By 1971, about the time that Traid went out of business, they were selling for over $500, and at that point, that kind of money could buy you a complete Nikon F2, arguably one of the best professional 35mm cameras made up to that point. But wait, there's more. Because of the proprietary film format, you were locked into Traid's processing service. You couldn't just take this to Photomat or to your local drugstore to get it processed. You had to ship it back to Glendale, California, and they'd send your pictures back to you in a couple of weeks. Now, the price of the processing was included in the price of the film, but even still, it was a lot more expensive than processing a 126 cartridge or a roll of 35mm film. The class action lawsuit Matowski versus Traid Corporation was filed in 1972, and it alleged, among other things, that Traid Corporation had fraudulently misrepresented the capabilities of the camera and that its real value was something like 1/10 of the asking price. I think that's probably a pretty fair assessment. Now, oddly, I haven't been able to find out how the case actually turned out, but one interesting thing I found in the court documents is that Traid apparently sold something like 100,000 Fotrons, which maybe speaks about the power of aggressive direct marketing. If you go on eBay at any given moment, you'll find at least 20 of these things for sale. I think a lot of people bought one and ran one roll of film through it and realized just how badly they'd been had and shoved it in the back of the closet for 50 years and tried to forget that it ever existed. Well, here you have it. The notorious Traid Fotron. If you've got any suggestions about any other interesting old things you'd like me to talk about, leave a note in the comments below. Thanks for watching.